Let us see classical conditioning. Introduction. Classical conditioning, a Pavlovian condition, is a learning process in which an organism learns to associate a previously neutral stimulus with an unconditioned stimulus to produce a conditioned response. This type of learning was first studied by Russian psychologist Ivan Pavlov in the early 20th century. The concept of classical conditioning has had a profound influence on psychology and education, helping us to understand how behaviors and emotions responses can be learned and modified. Pavlov's experiment. Ivan Pavlov's famous experiment with the dogs laid the foundation for classical conditioning. He was initially studying the digestive process in dogs and noticed that dogs salivated when they saw the lab assistant even before food was ordered. This observation led him to explore how stimuli in the environment could become associated with the reflexive behaviors. In his experiment, Pavlov paired a neutral stimulus, a bell, with an unconditioned stimulus, food. Initially, the bell did not cause the dog to salivate. However, after several pairings of the bell and this food, the dog began to salivate just in response to the bell. Pavlov concluded that dog had learned to associate the bell with the food, resulting in a conditioned response, salivation. Major concepts in classical conditioning. Before conditioning, with unconditioned stimulus UCS, a stimulus that naturally and automatically triggers a response. In Pavlov's experiment, the food was unconditioned stimulus. Unconditioned response is UCR, the automatic unlearned response to the UCS. In this case, the UCR was salivation in response to the food. Neutral stimulus, a stimulus that does not initially trigger the unconditioned response. In the experiment, the bell was a neutral stimulus before the conditioning, as it did not cause the dog to salivate. After conditioning, conditioned stimulus, the previously neutral stimulus that, after being paired with the UCS, triggered conditioned the response. The bell became this conditioned stimulus after being associated with the food. Conditions response, the learned response to the conditioned stimulus. After conditioning, the dog salivated. The sound the bell, which became this conditioned response. Here, before conditioning, even the bell rang, this dog became this neutral. Does it? But before conditioning, when food was given, this is unconditioned stimulus, salivation started. During condition, when along with the food, bell also rang, salivation started. After conditioning, only bell rang, the salivation started. Principles of classical conditioning. First one is acquisition. This is the initial stage of learning where the neutral stimulus is repeatedly paired with this unconditioned stimulus, leading to the development of conditioned response. The learning is most effective when the conditioned stimulus is present shortly before unconditioned stimulus. Extinction. Over time, if the conditioned stimulus is presented with the conditioned stimulus, the conditioned response weakens and eventually disappears. This is called as extinction. For example, if the bell rang repeatedly without the food being presented, the dog will stop salivation to the bell. Spontaneous recovery. After a period of rest following conditions, the conditioned response may suddenly reappear when the conditioned stimulus is presented again. The reappearance is known as a spontaneous recovery. Generalization. Once a response is conditioned, a stimulus similar to the conditioned stimulus may also trigger the conditioned response. For example, a dog conditioned to salivate at the sound of bell may also salivate at the sound of phone ringing. Discrimination. Organism can learn to distinguish between different stimuli. In discrimination, a conditioned response is only triggered by a specific conditioned stimulus and not by similar stimuli. For example, a dog may learn to salivate only to the specific sound of the bell, not other similar sounds. Higher order conditioning, also known as a second order conditioning. The principle occurs when the conditioned stimulus is paired with a neutral stimulus, creating a second conditioned stimulus. In this case, a new stimulus can also produce a conditioned response, even though it was never directly paired with the unconditioned stimulus. For example, if the bell is paired with a light, Neutral stimulus. So the light alone can eventually trigger the conditioned stimulus of salivation, even though the light was never associated with the food. Educational implication of classical condition. Classical conditioning has significant implication in the field of education, particularly in terms of how learning environments and student behaviors can be shaped. Some key educational implications are below. Behavioral conditioning. Teacher can use classical conditioning to create positive learning environments. For example, associated praise with a certain behavior such as a correct answers can lead to student response positively, salivating metamorphically to those behaviors in the future. Emotional response. Classical conditioning can help explain emotional responses in students. For example, a student who experiences anxiety during maths lessons after a negative experience in the past may lead to intervention to help recondition their emotional response to the subject. Condition preference or dislikes. Classical conditioning is also used in marketing and advertising, where certain products are paired with a positive emotion like joy and excitement to create a positive association with the product. Similarly, teachers can use this technique associated to classroom activities with a positive emotional response. Habit formation. Classical conditioning can assist in developing good study habits and other behaviors. For example, associating a certain time day while studying can help the student to form a routine. Conclusion. Classical conditioning is a fundamental concept in psychology that helps how behaviors can be learned through association between stimuli. Pavlov experiment demonstrated how a neutral stimulus could become a conditioned stimulus by associating with an unconditioned stimulus. Key principles such as acquisition, extension, spontaneous recovery, generalization, discrimination, and higher order conditioning help explain how conditioning works and how behaviors can be shaped. In education, these principles can be applied to influence student behavior, learning, and emotional responses, providing a valuable insight for both teachers and students in the classroom. Understanding classical conditioning can contribute to more effective teaching strategies and a better understanding of how behaviors are learned and modified. Thank you.